Hey everyone, I'm Clive,
Hey, and I'm Louis.
and today we're going to continue our BIM Best Practices webinar series with creating a best practice to help us with BIM scoping. The agenda that we'll go through is, first of all, talking about the scoping challenges that we experience in our industry, then talking about the best practices, and then we've got some tough questions. So in our best practices series, we find that asking some pretty tough questions, but also helping you with the answers, helps us all get there. So it's easy, right, Louis, for us to communicate with teams and get their commitment. Isn't it easy
Well,
to do that?
actually, no one really likes to plan or make commitments, so they find a lot of hesitation there.
Okay, so teams are hesitant, yeah, but they just need a little helping hand.
Well, if you don't have if you're if you don't have that commitment, you might get fed into the sharks, though.
Yeah, you might if you don't have control over your plan and your scope and understanding, then yeah, I agree. You probably get
Definitely.
sharks. But BIM scopes, they're quick, aren't they? They're pretty quick and easy to create.
You know what? I'd have to disagree. In general, most find that it takes too long to create or to simply get agreement. So, I can't agree with that statement.
I know that film. That's a pretty good one. That's Zootopia, yeah.
Hmm. Utopia.
But they're always clear BIM requirements. Yeah, we always have clear BIM requirements from the teams that are asking for them. Yeah, is that not right?
Probably for the person who's creating it, most find that they never ask for our input, or they usually mandate everything and never really, ask for my feedback or return my calls in general.
So this looks like somebody's asked for some BIM and then gone on holiday and put their head in the sand.
Pretty much what usually happens.
But there's only one standard, so that's okay. Yeah, everyone follows one standard, and that's good. Yeah, is that right?
One or more like 100, there's many.
You mean LOD 100?
No, exactly what I mean. No, there's more than 100 standards, whether they're company, global standards, different types of standards is what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. But when we define the BIM requirements, they're crystal clear. Yeah, they're totally crystal clear. Everyone understands them. Yeah.
Not exactly. There's many BIM tasks. There's sometimes that we don't know who should be doing what. For instance, modeling lights. Is it the architect's responsibility? Is it the electrician? At what point does it become a handover to the responsibility? So I have to disagree there.
Clear responsibilities. Yeah, that would be good. But at least we got this one. Everyone's a BIM expert, so therefore it doesn't really matter. Everyone can get it done. Yeah.
Sort of. Not everyone's born with that BIM gene, but with many experiences, maybe. But I can't say that everyone can just jump right in and just start doing BIM.
All right. That's enough of the fun today. So let's talk about how to radically improve BIM scoping, shall we?
Let's do it.
Yep. All right. So this is where we'll jump into a demo, and I'll start showing you the scoping. So we're in the scoping module of Plannerly. And the first thing you talked about, you said it was slow and difficult. Yeah, but surely it's not going to be slow and difficult if I can just click this button and say, use my templates and quickly create a BIM execution plan with a really detailed scope. Let's look and see if we've done something like this before. Oh, there's a template for me. And maybe I can also have a targeted. You told me that sometimes the reason is unclear about how or why you're doing the BIM in the first place. But what about if we could select the uses, and maybe we could say, we're going to do BIM for, let's say we're going to do it for design review and maybe 3D coordination and handover. So there are three specific purposes that we're going to do BIM. And we're also going to bring in requirements from previously defined projects or previously defined standards. I'm going to be the structural engineer, and I'm going to simply drag in my scope into the project. And for me, that's now created. If I open up my scope to show the scope that's been created, now it's created all of my requirements, my assignments, and also maybe others that I would like others to take care of inside of one drag and drop. That was pretty easy. How come you think that was so tough? Do you want me to do the drawing scope now? Your scope? Do you want me to do that for you?
Yeah, I could do it myself. It looks pretty easy. I could do it myself.
Okay.
So let me get in here and drag my scope in.
So I'm going to show you my mouse is over here. My hands are off the wheel.
There we go.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's pretty cool. And you've also got requirements for handover with the information requirements as well.
Yeah, I've done this before. So, you know, one of the things about templates is being able to have a consistency between projects. So one of the best practices, carry templates, whether you're pulling from project to project, but a template can really help make it consistent and speed up the process of creating an ABIM execution plan. So usually that's due yesterday. So this will at least help with deadlines.
Very cool, very cool. You mentioned about many standards. You know, there's something about LOD numbers. So I just found this feature that allowed me to pick whichever standard I wanted. So now I can choose if it's following an AIA or a BIM forum standard. So if I selected a standard here and then went back to our scope, we would then be able to identify those requirements and use the numbering convention of an LOD standard. For example, having 350 or having 400 for specific items that might be required. There's also some items maybe that do not fall into certain standards, and being able to see those as special cases. So understanding that we can still define something even though it might fall outside of a standard. Maybe you just want to see numbers. Is that how you would prefer to see the scope?
What teams are doing is using the images because it provides a lot more clarity. A picture says 1,000 words. Those images are representations that we can modify, that you can modify, and really get into the detail of what exactly you are expecting. And it really helps communicate between the teams who are building the scope. So instead of referencing what is LOD 350, well, what is LOD 300, use images, keep it simple, and use images to make those representations.
So images are easier to see and identify exactly what the requirements are from a visual perspective, but there's also a set of requirements that might not be so visual. So we've got geometry requirements, we've got information requirements that you shared, and we can see here, for example, the compression strength and the finish for concrete that's potentially required. But we can also open these and start to see maybe notes that we've collected in the past, our internal QA processes that might be really important, and even document links, so spec links, so that we can understand exactly what might be required from a specification perspective as well.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we've heard is that all the information is spread out everywhere. You know, you have a BIM execution plan, or you're referencing that document, but that document is telling you to go reference other places in other locations. You might, you know, hold all of your information in one location. I'll hold mine in another, separate teams. But here, what we could do is consolidate all that information into one location, and now we're speaking the same language essentially, or on the same page.
Absolutely. So it's a lot clearer to identify those requirements, and whether we do or do not follow a specific standard. If you are looking at the new ISO standards, then just selecting the none is essentially selecting the level of information need, being able to define exactly what the geometry, documentation, information, all of those requirements are. And in addition to maybe handover requirements from a level of accuracy using the LOA as-built scale. So if there is something that you are looking for handover with a specific accuracy, being able to define that as well, which is pretty useful. I can see this item is not identified with a responsible party. So you mentioned that sometimes it's not clear exactly who should do what, but I can just assign this by choosing the contractor and clicking assign. And now they know that that's their responsibility. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, showing the responsibility is one of the most important things that we need to do with our scope, is showing when it's being handed over. You know, who's responsible for each of those delivery milestones. So right here we can see the architect is responsible for the stairs during the design review process, but when they get into 3D coordination, the structural engineer is in charge of those stairs, and there's some information that might be needed at the handover. So after it's been installed or created on site, there might be some information that the contractor is responsible for to provide. You know, it could be a concrete finish or a material finish of some sort. So it's very clear here that there's different responsibilities for the one element, and it's not always, oh, stairs, it must be structural scope. Here we can actually see who it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super cool. And being able to define a date as well for when this milestone is starting and finishing, being able to see that. And we also will talk more about how we can get more granular on who is responsible and then the sequence in future webinars in Schedule and Track. So you talked about it being difficult about understanding responsibility, but what about when you have to communicate outside of the digital environment in a contract? How would we do that?
If we were to print out a whole summary of all of the scope for the entire project, and my scope is maybe 10% of that, it's hard to commit to a document that's 100 pages long for me. So if
Right.
we can target a certain scope that
If
just,
the structural team,
yeah,
the structural team, do you want all of these items from the plumbing and others?
probably not.
So let's take a look at the documents and how we might be able to create a filtered document. Let me call this the structural scope, and I'm going to hit print, and then I'm going to show how we can change who is selected. So we had the structural team selected with all of their milestones and a lot of detail in here. We can choose to see whether we want to include the detail and whether we want information requirements, etc. And being able to create a cover page as well, so we can see that. And then that document that's created for that scope, for that structural team, can have a nice cover page, but get right into a filtered set of requirements that have exactly what that team needs to do with the annotations that are linked together. So we can see the concrete stairs, it's a responsibility of this team, and all of those links out to the documents that we saw that were inside of those cards as well, all hyperlinked together. Just making it super simple for teams to have targeted communication even outside of the application as well.
Yeah, I'm more likely to commit to that.
So hopefully some of those steps are making it easier and quicker, but let's do a quick summary of what we talked about there. So best practices, information delivery milestones. We must understand why we are committing. What is the purpose of the model content, whether it's the geometry, the information, how am I documenting this, and what is the purpose of that information at that point in time? So tie it to an information delivery milestone is one of the best practices that we saw.
Yeah, templates. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
You go.
Templates really help make the projects consistent from one to another and also speed up the creation process. So it really helps continuously improve from project to project.
Yep. And then team-based scope. So instead of me being the one that was creating my scope and then also the plumbing scope, why don't you let teams that are responsible for that scope create it themselves? So Louis was creating it and dragging it into the same project. You can really start to work and collaborate together, and it's much more likely that Louis and his team would carry out that scope because they've been part of scoping it.
Yep. Yeah, and simplify those standards, make them visual. If you can share exactly what those standards are when you're creating this scope and make it a visual representation, it helps define it exactly what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And being able to make sure that you have a grid and you have assignments for all of those requirements. Everyone understands then who is responsible. And by using a lean approach to documenting the requirements, not using an overburdensome, too high level, but being very targeted with those requirements, it's much more likely that you're going to get the results that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And
one document for everyone doesn't quite meet everyone's expectations, or it doesn't quite work out well for everyone. They want something that just has their own items and that they can quickly reference to and agree to that. So, being able to filter certain information by teams is really useful.
So now let's look at some tough questions. And these are questions that we actually have a masterclass to help teams to, as a company, ask and also answer as we go along. So we'll introduce the masterclass as well if you are interested.
These questions really help gauge on how we should work together on the project. Not every project is the same, not every teams are the same. So it's really questions that we should ask ourselves before this project starts.
The first one is, how should that scope be created?
Right.
Is it a
Is it,
one-man band?
yeah, is it a one-man band thing, or is it something that, we can work on together?
Should Chris
How are we
Martin
going
create
to
it?
create this?
Should it be Chris Martin and his one-man band? He's pretty good, but I'm not sure he's the right guy for the job. So yeah, how do you collaborate? And then what standards? What are important standards? Not just saying that we're going to follow the ISO standards or the BIM forum standards or the MPS that we got from Dave. Let's really understand what standards and why. Are we using a classification because we think that we should, or is there a purpose to using a certain classification? And
Yeah,
then,
what are the most important BIM uses or delivery milestones that we should add to this list or this scope? What are our goals with the model? And, is it for coordination only, or is it for coordination and quantities? 4D, 5D, FM, AR, VR, many different types of uses out there.
and then how are we going to manage our templates? Are we going to start with something as a standard? How are we going to continuously improve those as we go through? Do we start from a previous project? How do we make sure that what we do is building on and continually iterating on our standards at the same time as creating great project content and great project requirements?
And how are we going to share this information? So are we going to, keep emailing each other? Are we going to send this through a messaging app? Are we going to use Plannerly, one platform that has it all? How are we going to continuously share this information, get the feedback, and get agreement? What does that process look like?
Is that quite one platform that has it all?
One platform.
Not everything, but we're really getting there. So, and then efficiency. How do you become more collaborative as a team? How do you get to this 2-second pit stop? How can a team be so efficient that in this example that they're changing 4 tires in the space of 2 seconds? So in conclusion, we should define some really clear information delivery milestones. That's a big best practice. When we talk about best practices, let's be clear on the why. And let's define them as information delivery milestones, and let's have them in templates to make sure that it's really consistent throughout.
Yeah, creating with your team is very important. Just like the image we just seen, if we can work together, we all know exactly what we're working on. I've got my scope, you've got your scope. Why don't we just build this together, and it'll be a lot quicker to get agreement and know exactly what to expect on this project.
And then simplify things. So instead of using complex and difficult to interpret and understand and requires another set of guidelines or dictionaries, let's try and keep it as visual as possible and make it easy for teams to understand so that you get the outcome that you're looking for. And so we've got a couple of resources to help get your team started. One is the Basics course, which is a set of videos that are continually evolving. If you're a Plannerly user, then please check those out. You can find them in the app and /demo. And then the masterclass, you'll see much more on the masterclass over the next few weeks. And we are supporting you now in your local languages. So you'll find a SmartLean BIM partner that will be able to host a masterclass in your local language as well, which we're pretty excited about. The next in the series of the BIM best practices is a pretty cool one because it's going to be about templates.